is Ideation 101. Welcome. We're happy to have you guys. So this is what we're going to be doing today. First of all, we have our introduction experience from our alums. The frameworks for ideating that we have provided. Evaluation for those frameworks, common pitfalls that you might encounter, and a Q&A session.
Hi guys, my name is Sonia. I'm currently a sophomore at UNC Chapel Hill, and I competed in the Conrad Challenge back in 2020. So I competed virtually under the repurposed tobacco and farmlands category. It doesn't exist anymore in the Conrad Challenge, but basically the focus of it was from it was in a collaboration with the Smoke Free World Foundation in order to innovate ideas that give tobacco and farmlands repurpose use aside from smoking.
Awesome.
Oh, and sorry, my team's name is called NextCap, and our innovation was a tobacco-based skincare serum.
I'm Ella. I'm currently a freshman at American University. I participated in Conrad from 2021 to 2022, and I'm the co-lead of A&I, along with Ishan, who you met last webinar. My Conrad project was called Air Clean, and we made an autonomous device that goes down the center aisle of public transportation vehicles and cleans it autonomously using both UVC light and a disinfectant spray. So that's both of our backgrounds. So let's get into some frameworks for ideating. So some common frameworks might be the SWOT analysis, the jobs to be done theory. You might want to look at the founder market fit, looking at iteration as opposed to coming up with something from scratch. You also want to look at for strategic foresight. So what is SWOT? So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It can be really helpful to do this for existing solutions and then look at where they're coming short, where they need to improve, and then jump in there to sort of solve whatever they're lacking. So you can, for strengths, you should observe what they're doing well. For weaknesses, you can see where they might not be doing so well. Opportunities include things like new developments. This can be like scientific or social, that might cause a growth in the market, and threats involve the exact opposite. So that's competition, new regulations, bad news, etc., etc.
Yeah, the second framework is kind of jobs to be done. And I think this kind of aligns with like product market fit. So figuring out where there are gaps in any sort of market, especially if you have obviously more of a consumer focused product rather than like a business to business type of innovation or solution or product. But just more thinking about what are tasks, daily tasks, or just tasks for a certain demographic that people need to be completed or done, and what can you kind of innovate based on that can help them get that done faster, more efficiently, or if there's really nothing existent on the market in the first place to help them complete said task, what can you create to fill that gap?
Yeah. So next off, we have the founder market fit. This involves examining yourself. So what skills do you bring to the table? This can be a really big interest in science, finance, any of that. You don't necessarily have to be an expert on your problem. You probably will be by the time you get to Summit, but you should really just pick something that you're interested in and the rest will follow. But this is the way you can really make the most impact.
Yeah, the fourth one is iteration. I think this is something that when I competed in Conrad, I didn't really think about. I thought that we would have to just like innovate something completely revolutionary, something that had never been done before. And I guess that is technically what my team ended up doing. But I realized after that, like a lot of great products have been created just based on observing other existing solutions on the market and seeing how they can improve those. Sometimes those make for the best products. They're not every product or existing solution on the market is perfect for consumers or businesses or any sort of customer. But if you can kind of figure out what's wrong with that product, how it can be improved, that can kind of be your innovation in itself.
Another one is strategic foresight. So this is where your research capabilities and your knowledge of whatever market you want to go into comes into play. So this includes like applications for emerging technologies. This involves looking for market growth, imagining yourself living in the future. So what would I want that isn't available now? Or what can I use that's currently an evolving technology to solve a problem that exists in my life? And this kind of ties back into the jobs to be done theory. You can also observe your target audience and see what they are lacking solution-wise in the gaps that exist in their current solutions. So let's get on to evaluation.
Yeah. So basically everything that we kind of just talked about are really great ways to begin ideating something for whatever category you're competing in. And I know that's the stage that most of you guys are at right now, but if you do come up with an idea, most times it's going to be a good idea, but it's definitely not going to be your final product. So you definitely want to kind of go through these sorts of similar frameworks for evaluating your idea so you can improve it to make sure it's actually something that's unique, has a product market fit, is good for in terms of what your team's personal strengths are and knowledge. So we're going to just go through these frameworks as well to see how you can go through that process. And the first one is SWOT analysis. So obviously Ella talked about that already and broke it down for when you're coming up with an idea. But let's say you have something, you just should go through like the strengths and weaknesses of it to make sure, you know, like what's wrong with it, what can you improve. I remember like when I first came up with our idea, we realized that there was a patent existing for it that was fairly similar. So we kind of had to reevaluate how could we make it so we're not infringing on an intellectual property. How can we kind of evade that infringement and just improve the strengths and weaknesses, make sure that our product is actually fitting into something that where there's a gap in the market, and just other processes. So like fully examining, fleshing out your idea to make sure that it actually fits into your market and is also something that your team, like with your current strengths and weaknesses, can actually viably produce.
Yeah, I would say same here. We also kind of were like, oh, there's a patent for this, but there's a lot of areas where it falls short. So even if that is the case, you can work around it and make things 10 times better. The second one is the 3 lenses of innovation. These are desirability. So this is asking the question, do people want it? There's feasibility, which is, are we able to do it? And then viability, which is, do we have the resources? Try not to let this one affect you too much. We've seen prototypes. I mean, I built my prototype out of Legos the first year I did Conrad, so you can really work with the resources that you have. This also ties in really nicely with your lean canvas that you're about to do, where you have the first section, the problem solution, your key metrics, and then sort of your UVP and your high level concept are all in your desirability, or sorry, feasibility category. For your desirability category, you have the UVP, high level concept, unfair advantage, channels, customer segments, and early adopters. And then for your viability, you have your you have your cost structure and you have your revenue streams. So it actually allows you to do this framework really easily, and it's very compatible with the current template that we are using, which is the Lean Canvas.
Yeah, the next one is market analysis, which I can't really emphasize how crucial it is and how expansive it is, I would say. It's something that my team and I started doing from the minute we kind of came up with our idea all up until Summit, like which is the final round of Conrad. Just because there's so many like depth, it's very in depth, I guess. And there's a lot of different ways that you can and should be figuring out what your market is in terms of your competition, your target demographic, and just like what consumers are really looking for. I guess to expand a little bit on my innovation, so it was called Next Cap, and it basically used tobacco seed oil in skincare, which is an oil that had never been used in any sort of consumer products before. But it came from tobacco plants. It was nicotine free, and it had the property to alleviate a lot of topical skin conditions like acne, eczema, and sunburns. And so my team and I kind of settled on this idea because we were all really interested in skincare. And then we realized that a lot of like our friends in high school were also just as interested. So we literally conducted customer interviews with them just to see like as a consumer of skincare or just cosmetics in general, what are they kind of looking for? What price range are they looking for in an ideal product? Just all these questions, which kind of gave us a much bigger picture into, how we should iterate our product to fit into those types of consumers. And then we also paired that with just like doing our general research on the skincare market, how big it is, what sort of other like similar competitors exist in terms of our specific innovation. So there's just a lot of different ways you can go about conducting market analysis. And I think you should explore all of those ways because the more information you have on who would be trying to buy your product, who are you competing with, just helps you iterate and improve your product.
Definitely. Another thing you want to look at is the founder market fit. For me, we started out in the heart of COVID. So we were thinking, oh, what can we do? We already knew that we're very, very focused on aviation and the aviation sector. So we were like, what can we do to help people fly again and travel? And make people actually feel safer than they did before the pandemic on public transportation. It's like planes or buses or trains. And we found out that, it's already not super great, but I think that we all have an interest in the aviation industry, just I guess the physics that go into building that sort of device, and it ended up working really well.
Yeah. And then the last one is what I already talked about when about ideating is just jobs to be done. I think after you've kind of gone through all of this analysis that we just went through, making sure that your product still really completes a task that the market is looking for and consumers are looking for.
So sorry, you go.
You're good. Oh yeah. So now we're just gonna talk about some common mistakes. First thing is not addressing a problem, which is kind of just what I sort of talked about in terms of product market fit. I will honestly say I competed back in 2020. And then after we finished Conrad, my team and I continued to work on our innovation, but we actually stopped working on it this past summer for good. And I would honestly say it was for a lot of reasons, but one of them was because I truly don't really believe we had product market fit. I think we had a good product. It was like revolutionary in some sense, but at the same time, we didn't have like a low enough price point to differentiate ourselves too much. The skincare market is incredibly already saturated. So I felt like we weren't really addressing a real problem in the market. There were just so many other existing skincare products that essentially accomplish the same goal as ours. And I think that's like obviously not an uncommon problem, but definitely just make sure that like no matter what your product is, that you really do have like a niche enough problem that you have a market that addresses a market that you can address with your product.
So another one is you should not wait for an idea to come to you. And I know it's really hard to sit down and be like, I'm going to come up with an idea today, but you just kind of have to do it. There's a quote that I like that says, opportunity does not knock. It presents itself when you beat down the door. And that's kind of true. You have to go looking for what you think you're going to want to work on. It's not going to come to you. It might, but that's probably going to be after you go searching for it yourself.
Yeah. And the third thing is sticking with the first idea you have. When we were first ideating for Conrad, it was a hard process, honestly. It's like what Ella was just talking about. Like it takes a while you can't just like stumble upon like a really great idea. Like it takes time. But I will say that even though I know you guys are like competing against a deadline of like having to submit materials by a certain date, I wouldn't just stick with the first idea that seems viable to you just because for the sake of being able to move on and start iterating and being able to submit it. Because I guarantee if it doesn't feel like it fully sticks with either, you don't feel like it has perfect product market fit, or you feel like it's an idea that your team isn't fully equipped or skilled enough to flesh out and address, like that probably means it isn't a great fit for you guys and you should continue ideating. I know it's like a frustrating process to not come up with a great idea really soon, but I guarantee you that if you take the time to really continue to ideate until you feel like you have something that fits and sticks with your team, then in the long run, it'll be a much better plan.
Yeah. Second to last is not working on ideas that you think might be too hard or too complicated for a general audience. So you'll have plenty of time, plenty of time to research your project. As I said, you'll probably be an expert on it if you make it to Summit. If you think it's interesting, then go for it. And we want you to know that the people that you will be pitching to at Summit are going to be subject matter experts. So there's nothing really too niche that you can't, make work into a viable product.
Yeah. And the last thing I would say is not working on boring topics. Like if you find something interesting, go for it. Or even if there's something that your idea that your team comes up with that you might not find like to be the most interesting thing in the world, I guarantee you there's still probably some sort of aspect that you'll find interesting. Maybe not initially, but eventually you will. Like for my product, like it was a skincare product and it was very like chem based because we had to study like the chemical composition of tobacco seed oil and the overall skincare product. I was definitely more of like a business oriented person and still am, but like other people on my team were more STEM oriented. So they worked on those aspects, but I had a really good time working on the more of the business and market aspects. And I think overall together, like our skills intertwined really well. So I think that's also just something, a piece of advice is for your team. If you can have a team full of like people with different skill sets, so you can work on different aspects. I think that'll not only lead you guys to success, but it'll just help you guys out more just because you won't feel like you're working on things that you're not really like skilled or knowledgeable about if you have other people that can help out with those.
Yeah, definitely. Q&A time. So we have a couple of questions that were already asked on the Google form. How do current events impact what people are looking for in a certain market? So I would say that, I mean, for my project personally, it was kind of everything. Um, we were in COVID. I mean, it still does exist, but everything was shut down and people were getting antsy, people wanted to travel. Um, the aviation industry was really hurting. And so if you can latch onto something that is going on currently, that would be great. However, I will caution you that sometimes things don't last as long as you hope they would. So a current event can just kind of be current and not necessarily be as big of a thing in the future. So you might lose that market viability. Another one was
Oh, wait. Can I add something to that quickly?
yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely like say the last thing that Ella said is really important. For my team, like yes, we started in 2019, but by the time we made it to Summit, it was 2020. And we were a skincare product, so we kind of definitely latched onto the idea that because people were staying indoors and wearing masks, obviously the makeup industry wasn't thriving, but people were focusing a lot more on skincare. So we definitely latched onto that idea. And I think it has been like more of like a lasting trend that people are like in terms of the beauty industry, people are focusing on like minimalist skincare and makeup now. But like obviously it was only very topical during COVID and we latched onto that, but obviously that kind of dwindled. So I would say the current events can help you, but if you can more try to analyze like lasting trends you see like over like a I don't know, like a 4 to 5 year time period, those can definitely help you out with market viability, but I wouldn't take like super recent news that you might be able to tell that it will fluctuate very quickly in terms of like ideating and working on a product.
Yeah. Another one is can you reinvent something or you have to come up with something completely new? I think this was a little bit addressed with like the iteration sort of thing. Um, you don't have to come up with something new. It can be, but it should be original, enough to get a patent on it, because you will have to do that at a later stage, or at least a provisional patent. You don't have to get a full patent, but it should be your own work. But the concept doesn't have to be completely new. Just improve an existing concept. Um, There was another question on how much idea versus execution matters. Um, I would say that they're both important. I think you have to have a good foundation, but if you don't execute it the right way, you're not going to be able to pitch your idea to a broad audience, or at least the audience that you want to reach. Um, so I think that they're equally important. I think execution can even be more important in some cases.
I would say in the lens of Conrad obviously places more of an emphasis on ideation. Because like I mean, like you can bring a prototype to Summit, but like obviously it's not required. But I would also say like if you're if you're ideating and working on your idea and you realize that it'll be very hard to execute or maybe impossible, then that probably also means that you're gonna run into an issue of product market fit. And like even if you decide not to continue your Conrad innovation post Conrad, like I think you'll realize that when you're trying to pitch it, if you realize that it's truly not viable, then even as an idea, it probably won't work.
Yeah. Another question I think is really interesting is how tangible does a project need to be? Can it be purely computational? And I think the answer to that is it depends on what direction you want to take it. The cybersecurity category is really, there's a lot of things that you can do with it. So you don't need to have necessarily a physical prototype, but you should have a digital one that you are ready to bring to show off to the judges. But it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. There's a lot of avenues you can take that down. Also, just wanted to say, if you guys want to put questions in the chat as well, or if you want to raise your hands, that would be awesome. And then we can start calling on people if you guys want to ask questions that way. I'm not sure, Kim, what the chance is that you would get to stage 3. I think that we start with about Sonia, do you know how many we start with?
Um, I'm not positive. I don't know if Yamaka, if you're still here, if you know.
Hi, this is Kristen with the Conrad Foundation. So last year we had over 900 teams submit in round 2. And then in the final round before the Innovation Summit, we had approximately 450-ish teams in all the categories.
Yeah, it does get a bit competitive at the end. But really, like, just, I would say focus on doing your best, and just making your product the best and not what other people are doing. Because it makes it a lot more enjoyable in my experience. Adia, do you have a question?
Yeah. So basically, I am with my team for the tech part, like you said. So the thing is, we're all STEM students, and we don't have any background of, business per se. So how do we like? We've got our mentor, and our mentor is the business teacher, business faculty member of our own school. So I think that's a plus point that we have on our hands. But I really don't feel that I feel that we're just gathering ideas as of now, and we're not actually working on something. Because till now we've gotten around 10 ideas, and either like 10% of it has already been done, and or something like some innovations that the team has come up with is not something that we're capable of doing uh, because we require that skill of expertise. So I'm kind of like stuck here, and yeah, if you could help me out.
So just to rephrase and make sure I got everything. First part of your question was you don't have any, you don't feel like you have many people who are super business oriented.
Yeah.
I would say that they sometimes, I mean, for my team, we were kind of in the same situation. So we just kind of had to learn. I do think that there's a lot of great resources on the Conrad Challenges website, especially on the Alumni Resources Library. So a lot of, you kind of learn as you go, but it is hard, it is hard, but if you just have to work at it, and research, and then just follow the resources, I would say. So Ishika, the best grade level is so we start challenge from 13 to 18. And there's really not a best time. You might want to do it when you can really focus on it. If that answers the question. Also, Adia, did I answer your full question? Okay, awesome. So how much does the business aspect of one's idea matter this year compared to previous years? I know the format is a little bit different, but the business aspect should matter just as much still. Just because it's formatted a little bit differently in the past 2 years or so, it's still, it is a big aspect. Your business presentation counts almost as much, or as not, if not as much as your technical viability, I would say. Vihan.
Yeah, so our product is from an up and coming industry. So it's like, or it uses components from an up and coming industry. Would that like reduce the feasibility of our product?
I would really say that this just depends on, how much research is out there.
Yeah.
I like it's hard to say, but if it's like, for example, like you're doing something on like that involves like the superconductor, I think it was recently proven false. But if you were doing something around the hype of it that would rely on a product like that, it probably is going to fizzle out and won't be as viable. But if there's research on it and you can figure out if it's something that you feel like you're going to be able to work on for a couple months, then I would say go for it. But I think it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, I would say like I'm not exactly sure about how it would work for like an up and coming industry, but like in terms of if there's limited research on your idea out there, that was the case for my team. I think like there was like maybe like 2, 3 total Google like scholar articles on tobacco seed oil, which is what we used in our product. And like it was a lot. It was like very little to go off of, but we actually, our mentor or advisor was able to like connect us with these like cosmetic chemical researchers that kind of helped us validate the chemical composition of our product, and it kind of proved to us that it was viable. So if there is anyone that you think you could connect with, or research, or just resources you can outsource to kind of, I guess, validate your idea if you're unsure of whether it would be feasible or not based on like limited research, I would definitely recommend that path.
Okay, thank you.
Dia, your question sounds like a good fit for Sonia.
Wait, sorry, I can't see Dia's question. Is it in the chat?
Yes, she says, my partner and I are very STEM oriented, so where would we go first to gain the amount of knowledge needed to secure the business aspect? Also, where do we expand
Oh,
from that first step?
yeah, I see. I would definitely like say that I feel like business knowledge is not necessarily like, I'm not saying it's like completely easy to learn, but I think it's something that you can definitely like obtain that skill over time. I don't think like conducting market analysis, like that was like I think the most important part of the business parts for our project. And that was like kind of something that like neither of us were necessarily, even though two people on my team were more business oriented, we weren't super skilled in that. But we kind of just did our own research. The student resource library that Conrad provides helped a lot in terms of just learning how to learn more about our market. And I would just say like that was like the biggest thing. I think just like there are plenty of resources out there, and obviously like the student resource library that Viamaka sent in the chat helps a lot with just guiding you of like where to start. Um, I will like I mean like I think like the hardest like technical part of the business aspect was the like finances, which we didn't really have to do until the summit stage of Conrad, which was the last stage. But for that, we kind of just like our advisor helped us outsource those resources and like connected with mentors. He also just helped us figure it out because we were kind of clueless. Um, so I would just say, like, honestly, like if you have people that you know or can outsource mentors to help you with those, I would definitely recommend that. Um, I don't know. I feel like if you come in with a STEM background, that's definitely more valuable. Not to like, I guess, shade towards business oriented people, but I feel like those are a bit more skills that are a bit more easier to obtain. But I think just the biggest thing that helped us was just outsourcing mentors and people who are more knowledgeable about us and could help guide us.
Yeah, I can definitely back that one up. Um, so some other questions were tips for the business part of Conrad, which is another Sonia question because I don't like business, but
um honestly pretty much like everything I just said. Like I said, I can't emphasize how important market analysis is. It's not just like a one singular thing. It's also not just a one-time thing you do. Like the more you iterate your idea, the more market analysis you have to conduct. And for that, I think it's definitely more qualitative, just learning more about your target demographic. I think like something that my team and I, we outsourced a lot of like people for that. Like when I was talking about the consumer interviews we conducted, but then like our own research, like we would just look at like market analysis trends. Like we would look up like the skincare market, read articles about recent trends and stuff. And I think that just helped give us like an overall picture of what sort of market we were trying to sell our product to. And then in terms of, like I said, with the last question, the financial details and more technical stuff, just outsourcing mentors or people you might know in your network that have experience with it and are willing to help you, I think is really helpful.
yeah. For unique names, this is really hard. I think honestly, it's probably one of the hardest processes that you will encounter when you're in your ideation phase. Once you've got your idea, you like it's the hardest thing. It's really hard to stick with something. Um, so for us, for my project, we were looking at different like a bunch of sources. You can sort of go with a play on words. Um, you can go with a um there's a bunch of different avenues. For us, what we did was air is the Norse goddess of cleanliness and hygiene. So we were like, oh, air, air, because we were very air travel oriented at first. Um, it's perfect. So we have air clean. But really it's a very personal thing. And I would say don't go with the first one that comes to you. My best advice is probably just write everything down that comes to your head. with your teammates?
Yeah. I would honestly say team name was the one thing that my team iterated like the most. I think we like had a whole spreadsheet of like 30, 40 team name ideas. The thing in our process, like Ella said, like there's just so many different ways you can approach it depending on your product, your team, any ideas you come up with. For us, since we knew that our product was very consumer focused, we looked up how other skincare brands that kind of came up with their product names and their company names. And something we found is that like a lot of them use like Greek or Latin roots of the contents of their product. So ours was called Next Cap, and Capnos was, I think, either the Latin or Greek root for tobacco because our product had tobacco in it, obviously. And we used that. Don't exactly remember where the next came from, but essentially our approach was just using a bunch of like Latin and Greek roots and putting all those combinations together till we found something that we liked how it sounded, liked how it was spelled, all of those things. It was definitely a process. I think this is like one of the biggest things where it's like don't stick with the first name or idea you come up with. Keep iterating, keep ideating until you find something that your entire team likes, that sounds good, sounds catchy, and just overall is very like appropriate for whatever your innovation is.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another question is, how common is it for the finalists to continue their ventures? And I mean, Sonia was already talking about this too, and I'm sure she can say some more. For me, I'm still working on it. We are trying to get our non-provisional patent by April of this year. But it is hard to dedicate time after Conrad is over when you have a lot of other things going on, especially if you're around college age or if you are entering junior year. But it really depends on who and like who's doing the project, how much time you have, how interested you are in it, and a bunch of other figures. And it definitely varies by team. Because I know some teams that have absolutely continued their projects.
Yeah, I think like pretty much what Ella said. It like depends on a lot of factors. I think that Conrad definitely validated our idea a lot by making it to like the summit round, which is a really great opportunity. And also they require you to file a provisional patent, which is just like how many high schoolers can say that they actually have a provisional patent filed. Like I said, like I worked on it for 3 years with I had 4 people on my team, 2 of them left. So my co-founder and I, we worked on it for about 3 years after Conrad. But like Ella was saying, I think a big thing that we encountered that was an issue or challenge was doing it without like a strict deadline or timeline that like Conrad has. It was easier within Conrad when we had like set dates for when we had to submit certain things, but when you're kind of being held accountable by just yourself to like work on things, I think it definitely is a bigger challenge while also balancing being a full-time student. I did Conrad my sophomore year, and I would say like junior and senior year of high school, like it was really easy to work on, but then when I kind of got into college, I would say like that's when like just school, life, everything ramped up. It was a huge change and adjustment. And I would say that's honestly when it felt hardest to continue working on my startup. So it did obviously like different people in different stages or grades of high school work do Conrad. But I will say like, especially if like you're a high school junior, senior right now competing, like if you are planning on continuing your innovation post Conrad, I would say like college was definitely like a turning point where my co-founder and I realized like this is getting to be really difficult to continue doing.
Yeah. Vinov, really fun thing. In a lot of states, and places around the world, patent attorneys are actually required to have a certain amount of pro bono hours, which is work that they do for free for people who are can't afford to hire an actual a patent attorney to do the work. This is the avenue that I'm going down because I'm in college, can't pay for a patent. And we don't expect you to either, but there's a lot of resources that you can look at to look at how to fund, or not even fund, just go down the pro bono route for a patent.
Yeah. Our advisor in high school was able to actually connect us with a pro bono patent lawyer. She's actually also a professor. But I will say, like, even if you aren't able to connect with someone like that, there was some other program we found that connected you with like pro bono patent lawyers. All you had to do was like apply, and it was a fairly easy application. Sure, there's plenty of resources out there, and there's a lot of opportunities to get connected with those types of people that'll help you out.
Also, the provisional patent does not have to be as detailed as the regular patent. I was talking to a patent attorney for a different project that I was working on, and if you include all of the things that you need to include and you're on a tight schedule, you can write one pro se, which is just you're representing yourself. So as long as you include everything that you need to, I would not recommend this. I would say definitely look for a pro bono patent attorney first, but it is possible to write your own. So how expensive can our product be? There is no limit for the scale of your project, I would say. Yours might be construction based, and that's okay. I would say if you can bring something very minimal as a sample, or just scale down a lot, that would be great. Or if you have like a model house for a construction project or model building that you can use and that you can demonstrate your project with. It's hard to say without knowing the exact project, but yeah, we brought a big robot, so it was like it was a big robot. So you can bring some pretty like sizable prototypes, but maybe not like a piece of construction equipment. That might be difficult, but if you can scale it down, and there's a bunch of resources. We have a prototyping webinar coming up that will definitely help out with those concerns. If you have something, if you can demonstrate your project through a video, that would also be great. If you aren't able to bring it to Summit.
The other thing to keep in mind when attending Summit with a prototype is, will all of the items that are included in your prototype be allowed inside Space Center Houston? So they would have certain restrictions on items that could potentially be brought into the facility. So definitely as we're preparing for Summit, those things would be shared with you guys ahead of time. So you can ensure that you're able to transport all of those materials with you to Houston, and then transport them to Space Center Houston, and then back. They do typically have an area where students can store their prototypes. So you could bring it, and then you'd be able to store it in a room for the remainder of the day, and then again take it back with you on the bus back to the hotel. But some things to keep in mind, as Ella pointed out, that you're able to carry it and bring it yourself, and it's a feasible size, and keeping in mind the restrictions of Space Center Houston.
Yeah, you definitely don't want the TSA to take away your prototype. That does not sound like fun. Would be very sad. So what level of completion should it be at for the lean canvas stage compared to stage 4? Stage 4, really it's just it doesn't have to be a complete business. it should just be, you've demonstrated that you've done everything that is necessary to get to stage 4, which it depends on what your project is and like how feasible it's going to be to complete in that amount of time. And for stage 2, it's kind of like it's pretty much just the idea of it that you should have. You can start working on making it a little bit more physically tangible. But in stage 4, you're going to have done a lot of work, but it's going to have gone by very quickly. And you'll be surprised by how much you can put into something by that point, I think, as well. You can continue one project for multiple years. That's exactly what I did. For both years, we used the same project. Our prototype got a lot better and a lot bigger. As I said, the first year we used Legos. The second year, we had contract manufactured with a robotics team local to us, and actually built a full-scale model of our prototype. So you absolutely can iterate on your project in the next year.
Shreya said, do we need to reach out to someone to sponsor our product? Ella, I'm not sure if you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe so. I just feel like, especially because most of the stages are more ideation focused rather than producing or executing. I don't believe there was ever a need for like funds or sponsorship or anything throughout the process, but I'm not sure. You can add on for maybe like creating a prototype, because I know I competed virtually, so I never really created a prototype, but I know you did, so I don't know if you ever got any funding or sponsorship for that.
It's definitely not necessary, but if you would like to, it can be very helpful. We made a couple connections we had contacted a couple of pilots who did some interviews for us. They appeared in our final video. I know there was another question. Sorry, I'm going off on a little thing. That asked about where to find the winning videos. There's a lot of resources on YouTube, and we're working on bringing them more front and center to highlight more projects as well. But you definitely don't need a sponsorship. It can definitely help, but it's definitely not necessary.
Vihan said, how valuable is it for our product to be feasibly implemented into the market? I would say it's pretty important. This goes off of like what we were talking about in the beginning about product market fit. You can have like a great product and it's very revolutionary and novel, but if it doesn't really solve any sort of problem that consumers or businesses or any sort of customer are facing, I don't want to say it's like useless, but essentially like you can't really create a sustainable business model off of that if you don't have a demographic that'll actually need that, or if there's already existing products on the market that solve the same sort of issue.
On the forum, there was another question about what the sources that you can use to identify a problem might be. We talked about this, but Google Scholar is a really great resource. Looking around you and just examining your own life to find different resources are also great. And there's a bunch of different avenues you can go down, but research papers are definitely great as well. Yeah, I would say look into that. For international patents, I do believe that some teams had received international patents, and I'm not completely sure, correct me if I'm wrong, about the necessity of a US-based patent for the Conrad Challenge. I'm not super sure about that one.
Yeah, I think neither am I for sure. You could email the alumni email. It's alumni@conradchallenge.org, right? Yeah, and we can get back to you with like a verified answer.
Absolutely. Some other questions were, you will not, well, so the reason that you need the patent is so that you can talk about your invention freely. There definitely are a bunch of different ways that you can go about getting that patent, but you definitely want a patent to be able to talk about, you know, what you're doing, so you aren't scared for your intellectual property rights. Thank you all for joining us. There will be another webinar.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The webinar will be on the 28th. I think it's actually office hours, so you can come in, ask questions. And yeah. But thank you so much for joining us, guys. It was a great webinar. Really appreciate you guys coming. Thank you.
You'll need a patent at the last stage, which is the summit stage. So that's if you make it to the final round. And that's the in-person summit hosted at Space Center Houston. They'll require you to file a provisional patent then.